There is so much to see and do in Athens. And to help you with your own itinerary, I have developed a top 10 that is split between a top 5 of the city's east end and a top 5 of the city's west end. Of course, what I think is worth seeing and visiting may not necessarily be what it is that you want to see and do. And so, of course, with any set of recommendations that you take in, make sure that you're doing your own research and make sure that you're prioritizing what you see and want to do, not necessarily what someone else is recommending that you see and do on your vacation. With that, let's jump into the top 5 of the city's west end. If you're going to Athens, you are undoubtedly going to see the Acropolis. I mean, it's everywhere. It's an archaeological entity that is built up along and on top of a mountain that is located in the center of the city. Most of the touristy neighborhoods are actually built in and around the Acropolis, and you will get some really wonderful views of the Acropolis and, of course, the Parthenon, the ancient archaeological structure that a lot of people mistake for the Acropolis, from pretty much anywhere in the base area of the, city center. With that said, even though you can get some really beautiful views of the Parthenon and the Acropolis from down below, and of course from a number of mountain or hilltops that are located within the city and that sort of encircle the Acropolis, I highly recommend that you pay the 20 euros and see the Parthenon and see all of the ancient sites, the theater, and so on and so forth in the Acropolis for yourself. It's one of the ancient wonders of the world, and it's a symbol of not just the city, but also basically of the country. It's kind of like going to Japan and, seeing or not seeing, Mount Fuji. When people think of Greece, it's the symbol of the Parthenon that represents the Acropolis that stands in for the country as a whole. I highly recommend that you buy your tickets in advance. Don't wait until the day of, and don't just show up to wait in a line to buy your tickets only to possibly find out that the date or time that you want isn't available. Go onto the tourist site's website, pick your date, pick your time, pay for everything in advance, and that way all you have to do is show up maybe 15 minutes in advance and wait in your time entrances line, and that way you can just go straight in and not have to worry about waiting in a second line or having any sort of issues with going to see the site. On the day of your visit, make sure to bring lots of water, and I recommend wearing a hat, sunscreen, and bringing with you maybe some long sleeve or clothing and maybe like a pair of pants, as well as a UV umbrella if you have it. Why? Very simple. Not only is Athens a pretty hot city, generally speaking, even in the fall or spring, but there is nowhere to hide once you enter the Acropolis site. There is no shady areas, and there are no structures to sort of sit yourself underneath to escape the sun should it be a sunny day. Even if it isn't a sunny day, odds are it'll probably be hot. So bringing that extra water and any sort of protection that you can to make sure that you can, withstand the heat is really important, because once you enter the site, I would say that the entire time to enjoy the ancient structures at the bottom, the theater as you make your way up, and then of course at the top and to exit, takes around an hour and a half to 2 hours. And the last thing that you want to do is run out of water, dehydrate or overheat. So make sure that you are packing, what you need with you in order to be to sustain yourself outdoors without any shade for that amount of time. One last thing, be prepared to be herded around like sheep. Even though I went in the fall and I didn't have to deal with the peak tourist season, there was still a point where everyone sort of bottlenecked as they wanted to enter and exit from the mountaintop area, the plateau where the Parthenon is located. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm just saying be prepared to have to deal with really cramped conditions and having a lot of other people all up around you and having security guards and, site staff pointing you and being very direct about moving or stopping or not touching this or that. Just make sure that you're in a good mental health space that day so that you can be prepared to deal with that. And of course, if you're going during the summer, you might be looking at anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes of being in a tight line. As an adjacent point, there is also the Acropolis Museum. Now, the reason why I haven't, marked the Acropolis Museum as its own part of the top 10 is because unfortunately I didn't actually end up visiting the Acropolis Museum, even though family, friends, and locals told me that I absolutely had to visit it. I didn't do it. It's something that I will do when I return to Athens for my next trip to Greece. That being said, I'm not going to recommend that you go and see it because, again, I don't recommend, doing things that I myself haven't done. However, I can say that the structure itself, which is located just outside of the Acropolis's south side entrance, is really beautiful. The building is somehow graceful and elegant and yet oddly imposing. My understanding is that there are actual steps and parts of the ancient Acropolis in the museum that are covered in glass, but that you can actually walk, just above. And so again, I do regret that I didn't get a chance to see it. And so again, I can't recommend that you do it, but I am going to recommend that you do your research and think about seeing it because it's something that I regret not doing. And I wouldn't want you to go there and leave Athens with any regrets. Like the Acropolis, Athens Agora is going to be a site that you are going to see wherever you go in Athens. It's similar to the Roman Forum in that it is a large complex that contains a number of old buildings and ruins from the ancient world. And in Athens, the Agora is actually pretty visible from, the streets. It's a really large complex that contains some famous sites like the Temple of Hephaestus, the altar of Aphrodite, a large number of Roman baths, and so on and so forth. But again, because a lot of it is visible from the street, there is a fence, but the fence is something you can see right through. I personally am not too sure if you necessarily need to pay the money to go and see the sites up close themselves. With that said, one of the reasons why I decided not to do that is because the road trip that I was going to do was going to take me to a number of other ancient sites. So I really just didn't see the point, knowing I was going to go to, Epidavros and ancient Olympus and ancient Corinthos and so on and so forth. But if you're not planning on going to see a number of these, other sites, then maybe it's something that you may want to consider doing if you want to get sort of up close and see the ruins themselves, if you want to enter some of the buildings, but I leave that entirely up to you. One thing that I am going to recommend is that you sit down and have a snack or a drink on Apostolou Pavlou. At the very end of my 5-week road trip, when I was back in Athens, I sat down on a patio just before sunset and had a couple of pints of beer, and it was an experience that to this day I still relish, and it's a memory that I remember really fondly. The view of Athens, of the Agora, of the Acropolis are breathtaking, and it's a site that you will remember, an experience that you will remember as well long after you have left Athens. So take a moment, to, unwind and have a snack, have a drink, relax, and enjoy one of my favorite views in all of Greece, and I think quite possibly the best view in all of Athens. Lofos Filopappou is located just southwest of the Acropolis, and it's a destination that I highly recommend that you visit. Really what it is a large hill that actually contains a large number of other smaller hills that together form a kind of urban park complex. On the hill, you'll find some interesting sites like the observatory, St. Demetrios' church, the prison of Socrates. It's not quite the Acropolis, actually far from it, but you will find a large number of ancient and modern sites that are well worth visiting as you make your way through this urban park. It's serene, it's really good exercise, and one of the best parts is that you get some really spectacular views of not just the Acropolis, but also the city of Athens, and in particular, the eastern and southern part of Athens, which is an area that you don't really get to see much of just given its location. There are a number of ways that you can enter and exit the park. And one area that I want to recommend that you visit is the Koukaki neighborhood, which is located just on the southern part of the park. It actually flanks the park's southern border. Koukaki is a residential neighborhood that has a number of winding streets that run up and down the side of the mountain, and it's just a nice, serene, residential neighborhood that I really enjoyed. And the neighborhood actually feeds right into the Acropolis area and into Plaka, and so I recommend that if you are going to make your way to Lofos, Filopappou, that you take a little bit of time to explore this non-touristy residential area that I really enjoyed. Two neighborhoods that I recommend that you visit that actually form a single neighborhood in many ways are the Kerameikos and Gazi neighborhood. Now, in a previous video, I discussed the Gazi neighborhood as the home of Athens' sort of gay community. And so if you want to learn a little more about Gazi through that lens, I recommend that you check out that video, which has already been published. Kerameikos is, just like Gazi, sort of a former industrial space that has largely been gentrified and is continuing to be gentrified. Both Kerameikos and Gazi have a large number of restaurants, like really good restaurants, a large number of bars and really fun bars, and there is also a pretty large sort of clubbing area wedged in between the two spaces as well. When I was in Athens, I visited both neighborhoods in the evening, and when I go back, I will definitely spend more time there during the day. But nonetheless, the walks that I did through the neighborhoods and the places that I stopped to have like a drink and a bite are places that I really, really enjoyed. And so I recommend that you make your way there too. And if you're walking through Kerameikos, make sure that you go to the Elvis Presley bar and check out the statue of Elvis that changes color at the very top of the building. Monastriraki is, I would say, the main tourist hub of Athens. Even though Syntagma Square is considered to be the main square of the city, I would say it's actually Monastriraki Square. A lot of times when you see pictures of Athens and you see pictures of the Acropolis from down below from a main square, it's actually Monastriraki Square, not Syntagma, in part because you can't really see the Acropolis from Syntagma Square. With that said, Monastriraki is kind of the entry point and the gateway into Athens. It's oftentimes the metro stop that most, tour books and tour websites recommend that you exit in order to first discover, the city of Athens. Monastriraki is a neighborhood that you will visit on several occasions, and I highly recommend that you take a little bit of time to discover some of the shops and cultural centers that are located just off of the neighborhood's main touristy paths. In addition, I want to recommend actually that you check out this dessert place that I really fell in love with. It was recommended to me by a local, and I visited there I think 2 or 3 times while I was in Athens. Once before I left for my road trip and twice afterward. And the store is called Nancy's Sweet Home, and hands down some of the best desserts I've had anywhere in the world. But the very first dessert that I got was a chocolate baklava, and oh my God, it is one of the most delicious things that I have ever put in my mouth. So again, Monastriraki is somewhere that you will visit a number of times, but take some time to enjoy some of the spaces that are not necessarily, along the main touristy paths, and do stop and enjoy some of the great food and some of the great desserts, cafes, bars that are in the neighborhood, and especially Nancy's Sweet Home, which is just divine.